Spread the word as we gather over Christmas. It doesn't have to all be despair. I see the darkness, I feel the darkness, and I don't even know whether it's getting more or less dark anytime soon. I don't know. But it's not all rage bait and digital media madness. You can come to NewsNation, you can watch this show, and you can hear lots of different perspectives on what we're dealing with, and God forbid, what might make anything better. So tonight, I want to leave you with this. This is my last show of the year, okay? And you know, if you know anything about me, you know my gratitude towards you and my team, especially Dusty. But the bosses here at NewsNation that give me an opportunity to do what I probably couldn't do anywhere else I've ever worked. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I show you my gratitude by busting my ass to try to see things and tell you things that you won't hear other places. So here's my take on who and what is going to be a big part of what people are talking about at the holiday parties. I watched the Dave Chappelle special twice, okay? I get why people feel it was different. It was. I am a fan of Dave Chappelle. I have been for a very long time. And that doesn't mean I'm a fan of everything he says and everything that he thinks is funny and how he decides to make it funny. And that's okay. But I think this special will, put it this way. Dave Chappelle should watch this special because the man who refers to himself as a once-in-a-generation talent may need to consider a little bit more that talent alone is not going to get him where he wants to be. He clearly wants this special to be a testament to his ability to weigh in on issues that are absolutely no laughing matter. And depending on your perspective, a lot of this special probably was not funny. And no, I'm not just talking about if you're sensitive to trans jokes. Although I do agree with people who are sensitive to them, it's in poor taste for Dave Chappelle to say that those jokes went over great in Saudi Arabia, a society that is notoriously repressive. But I was surprised Chappelle would fall for a familiar piece of sophistry, that he is more free to talk in Saudi Arabia than he is here. Don't confuse convenience with conscience, okay? If he weren't mocking what they want mocked, okay? Next time you go there, Dave, criticize the royal family, mock Sharia, and see if you make it home without begging America to come get you. But I do agree with a main point that he made. I agree with Dave Chappelle that something is very off in our country, our society, our politics. There is a darkness. And no, I no longer believe it's as simple as a disconnect of amplified minorities that dominate social media, magnifying outrage by design with their algorithms with no accountability. I no longer think I can safely dismiss social media as not reality. Not anymore. We are losing to what gets people paid. Right and left are capitulating to catapulting themselves to revenue and followings by making people angry. And I, like Chappelle, I can't identify what the main driver is, or whether it is one or a bunch of conspiracies at play. But it is his advice I want to echo. Don't be someone who decides to believe and repeat what they do not know. You can think, you can feel a certain way, but we have to get more comfortable with the idea that you don't know. And with that is a reciprocal right, that you become wary of those who seem to be so sure of what and who is the problem. And that you start to notice how they shift from topic to topic just to keep the rage fresh, but there is no penetration to the thoughts, to the perspective, and how rarely they have any good ideas on how to make anything better that isn't just code for making something worse. Now, where I do not agree, and I think is the right place to end the year for me, I was truly disappointed in the lack of critical thinking that is or was a hallmark of Dave Chappelle's best work. The comedian ended by saying, in case I get co-opted by them, right? This anonymous evil of who's making everything worse, right? You'll know they got me if I say the code. And the code is, I stand with Israel, and he dropped the mic. I believe that he should have picked the mic right back up because it was a terrible way to end. You could never say, I stand with Israel, because you'd never believe that, because you'd never see any value in supporting the existence and survival of a state and a people that is surrounded by people who want their destruction and act on that on a regular, if not cyclical basis. I don't think it's funny, and as someone who begged us to believe he does not wish ill to trans or other people that he jokes at or targets, he should be more aware of spreading anti-Semitism, especially now. And he probably should tell you that he converted to Islam going on 20 years ago. I think it's probably relevant for him. Why? We have to learn that there's a huge difference between being Muslim and caring about Islam and being an extreme Islamist, okay? And I cannot judge from Dave Chappelle's behavior how devout a Muslim he is. I mean, he's walking around smoking and drinking. I mean, I'm not saying he lives it to the letter, right? But his understanding of the faith clearly affects his politics. The idea that he can't be upset at Saudi Arabia over killing the Saudi journalist who lived in America, Jamal Khashoggi. He lived in America to avoid Saudi oppression, by the way, because Israel has killed over 200 journalists. This is a false comparison, objectively and subjectively. I doubt there are many people in Israel who believe there hasn't been enough death since October 7th. But even if all those labeled as journalists were, there's a big difference between hunting someone down because they're saying what you don't like and being killed because you are where a war is being waged, okay? There are too many of us falling in line behind agendas that are based on BS. Yes, something is off. Yes, things are trending in a bad way. I don't know what the answer is. And I don't know that we wouldn't be better off if more of us say we don't know and stay open and stay critically thinking. I'll give you an example. You just heard, if you joined the show, me and Elizabeth saying, hey, looks like we got a Christmas gift here. You see? GDP, 3.5%. Look, I know there are so many of you who would love me to echo that. Hey, it's good. It's a good data point. That's not intellectually honest. It's just not intellectually honest. It isn't. And I am not a hater on the Trump administration. I'm not a supporter of the Trump administration. I want the country to do better. And you can't look at this number and see it as an unqualified statement of our success. Why? One, because of the shutdown, we don't even know how relevant the data is because of the delay and the lack of manpower that went into it, okay? Second, you got to look within the numbers. And I'm not saying that you can find whatever you want. This isn't just a straight read. What led the growth? Okay? Top earners increasing their spending. Why? Many reasons. What was the primary driver? A great year in the stock market. All right, what was the second biggest driver of that growth? Increased government investment that juiced the economy. Now, what is missing if those are the two main drivers? What about the people we want to do better? What's happening with them? Those who don't have great savings, who don't look at the stock market as the indicator of whether they had a good year. We have what is called a K-shaped economy, okay? What is that? You can Google it. The short answer is a K, one prong is going up. Those are the top earners that are doing better and better and better because that's the way this economy is designed. Then there's the other prong that's going down and down and down. Those are the people that everyone keeps saying they care about. You care about using their anger and their angst to make you popular, to give you power, but who's doing anything for them? They are not part of the 3.5% growth. No, not really. I don't want to punish the top. I don't see investors and people who make money off equity as bad. But at some point, somebody has to think about everybody else. And that's what's not happening. And that's why I say, of course, Epstein matters. I actually do want to see the survivors get other names and avenues of opportunity to get made whole for what was done to them and expose people who knew. But that's not why these people are doing it. That's not what it's about. It's never been about that. It's about power and advantage. And here, I'm going to keep an eye on what goes on. I'm telling you, health care costs matter to more people in America than anything you're going to see in the Epstein files. So I'm not starting with Epstein. I'm starting with this because this is what matters. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.